And it really, it is a sensitive moment when you're, going to take on someone new.
When I used to wait tables, when there was a customer complaint, the first thing you do is remove the plate, remove the offensive item, right? And then you always alert somebody, either another server that's kind of in charge of that shift or the manager.
Thinking that when I would go meet with a referring doctor, that's what they would want to hear about. And I would spend a lot of time in preparation for those meetings.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Free Range Vision. I'm Matt Jensen alongside Dr. Vance Thompson. And for nearly 2 decades, we've been pioneering in practice, business, and team leadership. We'll cover everything from the pivotal lessons we've learned to the formidable challenges we've overcome and sometimes lost to, providing you with the essential tools to steer your journey and empower your team as you venture together. So whether you're at the helm of a practice or simply striving to cultivate a stronger culture, well, you found your flock. Let's venture off the beaten path together. Welcome to Free Range Vision.
Well, hi everybody, and welcome back to Free Range Vision. I'm Matt Jensen, and I'm here with my colleague and friend, Dr. Vance Thompson. Thanks for being back with me, Vance, to talk about today how doctors can get busy in their first 90 days out of training. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Matt. I love doing this with you.
Yeah, these are fun sessions, and we're getting a lot of fun feedback that people are applying right away to their practice and to their leadership team. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
The first 90 days are kind of nerve-wracking for a practice and for a doctor, whether it's an optometrist or an ophthalmologist. That's a big ticket item, so to speak. That's the highest person in the food chain at a practice. We cost the most, our highly compensated folks, and they're the only people who can really create an economic output. And yet, it's hard to know exactly how the first 90 days, the first 6 months should go. And there's so many barriers to making that efficient, from credentialing to just team culture to introducing them to the marketplace, sometimes even, clinical schedules. So we want to unpack that today, Vance, because you've had a lot of people join you over the years, and it's never been easy, but there are some kind of rules of the road that you've learned over time.
Right.
So let's first start with just some of the basics. You're always kind of the leader who is thinking, we're never really hiring, but we're always hiring if it's the right person.
Right.
Give us a sense of your philosophy around talent acquisition.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of what we're talking about matters for the whole team. And since, egalitarianism is, one of our guiding values, I just want to emphasize the more you do what we're going to talk about from the top to every position, the better, your journey is going to be. Since we're talking about doctors, and it is a sensitive moment when you're, going to take on someone new. And so you're right, the decision to take on someone new is such a big one. And I have found that if you have the philosophy to wait until you have a need, that you run the risk of maybe compromising on, what you're, really, looking for. And so I, have always had this philosophy, right person over right timing. And I suppose, a journey can never get that just perfect. But I've had times when I had zero need and amazingness came, walking by. and I knew that, I was being shown an opportunity that if I said no, that I probably would regret for the rest of my life. And so I really feel like if you hire the right people or ask the right people to join you is a better way to put it, I think. Because I've always felt that if you want to work with rock stars, it's great to offer them a path to equality.
Hmm.
And because sometimes the idea of being an employed doctor versus a partner, you want to understand what sort of practice you're joining or what sort of practice you want to be. And I want to work with stars. And so, for me, that meant that I was willing to give something, up, to not be, the spotlight, if you will, but to share it. And I love being a team player. And so having other people join you that, that's going to resonate with, and I don't know if we will need to talk about it much, but that wouldn't take advantage of that philosophy, that hopefully, they want to be the same, share and do it together, shoulder to shoulder. When those sort of people come by and they are great clinically and surgically, in addition to being a great person, that to me is an opportunity that everyone has to kind of think about. Am I going to pass or am I going to take it?
Yeah, and you covered a lot of ground there. I want to make commentary on just a couple of the items. You mentioned the team as well, that we should have a 90-day plan for them. You were 100% right, and that should be a whole other episode,
Right.
Because it's different expectations.
Right.
They're going to walk in wanting a full schedule for the doctor they're working alongside, whereas the doctor will have different things they need to be doing to build their practice and reputation than maybe one of our team members that's supporting them. Yet they should both have, their own 100-day plan, so to speak. So it is worth thinking through that element. And I just want to, it's so helpful when you remind me of the egalitarian value that it's so easy to trip up over when you're taking one topic at a time.
Well, and I really appreciate your comments about the team, because oftentimes that is more of a need.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit different process, even though you want the want and the people part and the connection and the culture and the love and everything that goes into the people part is for all. One may be more of a need and one sometimes may be more of a want.
Yeah. The second thing I wanted to draw from your conversation is I remember when you and I first started working together after the marketing agency, but within the clinic of Vance Thompson Vision. And one of the first things we did, I was probably with you a couple of months, and we were interviewing Dr. Keith Rasmussen,
Yeah.
who was just, and still is, golden. Just a great personality, a great clinician who had some events in his life happen where he wanted to be a different kind of optometrist,
Right.
be on the surgical side of optometry. And boy, what a force he
Right.
was when I was younger, and he and I are the same vintage, but to just see this guy that was so wise so early,
Right.
and just knowing within moments, we got to have this guy.
Right.
And knowing that I was a little bit outside of my own, like I never hired anybody before, and much less an OD, that was a great moment. But then 60 days later, 40 days later, maybe, our friend and your bestie, Dr. Doug Wallen, was coming back from the other side of the state where he had worked with you for 15 years or so, and then had gone to a different side of the state to help start a refractive program, and was moving back to the area. And after a couple of years, and you're like, I think we need him too. And I remember thinking, it was one of the first times where I hadn't been on the receiving end of your philosophy of let's just do it all. Usually I was the beneficiary directly. And now I'm having to figure out, okay, how do we make a business plan out of this? And I wasn't for it. Though Doug is equally, these are stallions of optometrists, just great men, and humble and great clinicians. But I remember it was the first time I had to really see firsthand your philosophy at play. It was probably a year early on the second one, maybe two. And but you backed it up. I can use them. I can grow with them, and you did. And it took some coaching from you to get me there. I'm so glad you did, though. It was a great example of you mentoring me in my career.
Well, there was a lot of emotion too,
Mm-hmm.
because even though Doug wanted to go spread his wings and do that, we had done so much together already, and so I was heartbroken when he wanted to go do that.
Yeah.
And so was even having a hard time with the idea of filling that spot with another optometrist, and it was an amazing moment when Keith came walking in, because I knew it was meant to be, and then so soon after that, for Doug to have a desire to come back, there was a lot of emotion, and so I also told Keith and Doug, I really want you two to talk about it, and
Yeah.
if you can figure out wanting to do this together, I'll figure out how we're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And but I have found that with the right people, when you work with stars, they go out and they're also rainmakers, if you will, and they grow the business. So I'm not someone that just thinks about current state, but hey, we got a great foundation here. Let's go out and grow it together, shoulder to shoulder.
And a real vision of what could be.
Yeah.
And even how you handled, this is such a great character sketch, because you did that with Doug and Keith, had them talk together, cast a vision. Do you remember how you got me on board?
Well, I remember it very well, because you weren't very responsive, and
No, I'm not, sorry, not on board with you, but
Okay.
on board with the idea of two optometrists at once.
yeah.
Well, I'll answer the question just because I'm afraid you'll embarrass me again with some other thing that you did to get me on board. But you had me talk to Bruce Maller,
Yeah.
who was a sage advisor in
Yeah.
our industry. And here I am, brand new to ophthalmology formally, and I'm talking to the king
Right.
of,
Right.
practice, dynamics, interrelational,
Yeah. Such a
just
clear thinker.
powerhouse.
Yes.
And what a gift that was to me to have that kind of direct dial over the years as well.
Right.
And something to shoot for in my own career. And with one tough decision, you lined everybody up to align on a certain culture that I think is a really important thing for our listeners to notice.
Right.
What would it take for people to not only buy into this idea, but to be the ones who would push an idea like this themselves in the future? That's harder.
Right. Right.
Really good.
Right.
Well, let's leave the OD conversation for a moment,
Yeah.
because, we now have a philosophy at Vance Thompson Vision that a busy surgeon likely has a couple of optometrists working with them as their kind of surgeon extender, in clinic beforehand, maybe afterwards, alongside the patient's primary eye care provider. But on message with today's discussion is, okay, so, how do we align ourselves with the new optometrist who's joining our practice, or specifically the new surgeon? And there's some things I think we can do to get ahead. And the differentiator between the surgeon example and the frontline team member is, we mentioned the barrier with things like credentialing, but and a lot of practices don't do this. But getting out and meeting the community, the hard work, it's almost like a political campaign. You have to not be in clinic.
Right.
Which is counterintuitive to building a practice. A lot of times you think, well, I'm going to go there and clock in every day and wait for the patients to come. Eventually word will get out. But that's not the way you challenge the doctors who work with you and the partners who work with you and their doctors. You all have that same challenge for people who are going to join the fold. Talk about that expectation a little bit.
Well, the doctors that I've had the honor of joining, I have, first worked hard to build a great relationship, a deep connection, and how much I love culture, but how important that is in it. And so in that process, before signing and then after signing, I already know if I have someone who wants to run towards success and what it takes versus have it come to them. So I'm really attracted to people like you, Matt, who want to run towards being the best version of themselves and touching other people's lives. And so there's kind of an energy, and one of the things that I've always loved about working with you or even the doctors I work with is being a governor almost, and not talking about politically, but like on a car, that when to maybe be a reminder of, are you doing okay? And, life balance and, taking care of yourself at home and your family. So when you work with people like that, you already know that you don't have to, worry about what they're doing when you're, busy in clinic and surgery. And so when you offer someone like that, would you like, my advice on the growth of your practice? And they always say yes.
Right.
Because it's something that I happen to be, really interested in and attracted to is how to grow relationships and grow a practice, which is, a lot of relationships. And so I'll make my 20-point list. And you're right, near the top is the going out and developing, their own, relationships and connections, and oftentimes going with them early on so they can see the process and maybe learn from some of my mistakes. One of my mistakes that surprised me was I've always been attracted to, great technology and techniques and keeping up with that voraciously, reading, everything that we do and thinking that when I would go meet with a referring doctor, that's what they would want to hear about. And I would spend a lot of time in preparation for those meetings to give a mini symposium, on current state and refractive and cataract surgery, my areas of interest. And I'll never forget Wayne Schlotthauer, wonderful optometrist.
Great man.
I've always had my kind of pseudo board of directors in life, whether it be, people with more of a business slant like you, or, someone more with an ophthalmology, slant like my partner John, or someone with a, optometric slant, or internally, for instance, like Doug and Keith, or externally, like Wayne Schlotthauer was one of those, what I call my board of directors of life. And he told me once, he goes, Jim, his partner then, who was just a great man too, Jim Shireen, said that, Vance, Jim said he sure enjoys meeting with you, but every time that he meets, he wants to get to know you more and what makes you tick and about your family and the personal side of things when you just constantly want to talk about professional things. And it was really a hit right between the eyes of awareness that immediately made sense to me, but I didn't get back then.
That's interesting. You very rarely trip over a relational basic like that.
I was thinking the referring docs wanted things that were going to help expand their practice when what they wanted to know was, hey, get to know me before doing business with me.
Yeah, and also what kind of person am I sharing my patients with?
Right, exactly.
Right? Kind of the deeper meaning part. And the what's so interesting about that is you're so good at that part also. You almost have to get more, pump yourself up a little bit to go talk about the technology. You're great at that too, but the relational part comes so easy. But we do kind of fool ourselves into thinking, we should go with a way that maybe isn't normally our first calling card, being so great at relationships.
Well, and I advise actually even people in all businesses now that way. Even the reps from the companies that want to come, teach us about their new thing or their new technology or talk with our team, I tell them, what I learned. And that is, I really value that too. That's why it was so surprising, to me that didn't get that just naturally, but I'd like you to care about me and my team, and get to know us before, wanting to educate us. And so I think all businesses are can be their best version of themselves if the people that can influence their business are people that they get to know before they, educate on what they can offer.
And you can tell when people want to do that, right? I think of your younger partner, Tanner Ferguson, who is doing such a good job at growing, been out 3 years,
right?
Just an amazing surgeon, great human being, like all of your partners. But I was having coffee with a colleague a couple weeks ago, before work, before clinic, and I look over and he had walked in with an optometrist from town just to sit down and have coffee. And I caught up with him afterwards. He's like, "Oh yeah, we connect for coffee every few weeks." And he had been taught and then had an appetite for building those relationships early on, when he was on fellowship.
Yeah.
But here he is, way past the time when people would say you have to continue to do that. I mean, some would say you don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
He can't help it.
Right.
He enjoys it. He enjoys the relationship part, and two, he knows that keeping those relationships strong, just checking in, just a cup of coffee, is really important to the lifeblood of his team, and keeping tabs on what's going on in the optometric market. This particular doctor had just opened up a new clinic, so we wanted to hear all about that. And that makes me so proud of you and so proud of him that those little basics that are overlooked by most.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I try to emphasize, and Tanner is a great example of it, is to not miss out, in the opportunity in these relationships to be just simply transactional. I think so many people, whether it's at work or away from work, are, just kind of doing the transaction side of a relationship and missing out on what I would call the beautiful intimacy that can happen. For instance, in a referring relationship, the trust that each other is putting, into, together helping make this, patient the best they can be. And then the patient trusting both of them, and to recognize that intimacy and to enjoy it, I think is one of the main reasons that at this stage in my career, I absolutely love, doing what I do, but I love seeing, my partner's growth and success, because I am almost, like a proud papa, and that would be, an intimate thing, a father to a child, or a big brother to a little brother, or a little sister. And so I think what a lot of people need to do is just recognize some of the more intimate aspects of those interactions.
Yeah, I think that's so great, Vance. The next little part of our conversation, I'd like to give some just tactical tips, because a lot of people will think, in my first 90 days, how am I going to get to, meet all the area docs or be introduced to the community? And so maybe I'll give a tip, and then I'll challenge you to come up with one as well. But one of the tips that I like to share with doctors is to be very cautious about your clinic schedule. And rather than just opening up the schedule and having patients be dropped in anywhere, here's a 9 o'clock on Monday, here's an 11:15 on Monday. Why did they go there? Oh, that's what the patient asked for, right? And having the whole thing be open, maybe just open up your Monday morning schedule and your Wednesday afternoon schedule, and have that be your only clinical openings that week. That way, every patient is, put in there. When they come in, they see other patients around. They know you're busy. The provider and their team stays in clinical shape, so they're seeing 16, 17, however many patients in a morning, and not getting in the habit of only seeing 3. Because if you have an hour and a half to see a patient, you'll take an hour and a half. So you just stay in shape from your fellowship training and whatever. But then you've also got then afternoon on Monday, time to go out and visit with community members, area optometrists, primary care doctors who might have an ocular, thing come up, write articles, write thank you notes, write notes to people, get to know your team, all these different things that you can be doing with that downtime. But what happens is you'll put 4 or 5 in the morning. They'll take twice as long as they should, and you might find yourself with 10 or 15 minutes between each patient, which is a perfect wrong amount of time to do anything.
Right.
We squander that amount of time. And so really chunking your days, batching your days like that, I think is really helpful in the first 90 days of your program especially. Take some discipline.
Right.
Because you're going to be like, wait, I should be, but until I should be busier every day. Just allow yourself to be busy a couple of days for a couple of weeks, and then open it up to another day part.
Right.
That'd be one tip that I have. As it relates to optometrists or any other way to get a new doctor busy, what are some tips that you have?
Well, I really like your tips. And I think that one of the things that I think is important is to not want to get busy too fast and to take the time to build your foundation, because there's a lot of moving parts when someone goes from well-trained clinically and surgically, but not well-trained practice-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And even what they did learn in their training, practice-wise, is a way different practice than the practice they're joining. And even if they were in another private practice and they come join,
Different.
another private, they have a whole new set of variables. And to not get too impatient, to need to see too many patients too quickly, or meet with referring doctors too fast, but to really go get to know the why of the practice, the culture of the practice, get to know the phone team who is representing you to the outside world, get to know the insurance people, the business manager, and
Go through a consult.
Right. Get to know the technicians and staff, and watch how people check in up front, learn some of the secret sauce, work with, the senior partners, about, their expectations, and spend time with them on asking them for advice. That just sets the stage for when those first patients come in, that, you're going to have, a wild success. So I think that, my tip would be to set the foundation. I'm kind of, sometimes I want to talk more about, what attracted someone to a practice, but the tip I'm giving is for someone who's made the decision to join that practice and that 90-day plan. And I think it's really important to get to know your practice and
how does it work here?
Right.
What is the flow like here? What are the business metrics here? Just to get
and
to know
work
those
with
things.
your technician or nurses to, how you expect the tests to be and what, they know. Work with some of the more experienced people, so that you are doing a little bit of role playing, and that that the patient education materials are up to snuff, and you understand them, and the forms and the informed consent and the financial forms and all these things that patients and doctors are going to be asking you about. It's just so much more comfortable if you've did some preparation ahead of time.
Yeah, and you're not looking at it for the first time, on your third patient.
Right.
You've got a sense of it. The other thing that I see you do well, and your other partners do this well too, is when a new provider is coming in, after a couple of months, you've had evening receptions. where you, maybe a more senior partner, will introduce them to the community, but also to area doctors. Just a small reception, just anywhere from 10 to 20 people, but also just to give a little overview of like, here's their background, here's where they came from. They're joining us from this. They're highly sought after. Kind of giving them some street cred from person who's been with the organization for a long time to person who's brand new to the organization. And one of the things that you say, and I've heard Berdahl say that's so powerful is, I would trust them to do my surgery.
Right.
And I know personally that you absolutely believe that in your heart, or they would have never joined in the first place.
Right.
That would have been snuffed out before.
Right.
But I just think that is such a powerful thing that a lot of senior partners, maybe feel a little, maybe they're not quite comfortable doing that because they're fearful that it might cut into their volume, their future growth. When in our space, in ophthalmology, it seems like there's always plenty to go around.
Right. Well, and you're right. Some senior partners are meant to be the junior partner too, meaning the only person.
Yeah. Right.
And so, the senior partners that are the joyful ones I feel to join are the ones who, really take joy in watching that person's growth and success.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is really helpful that I've observed is how you and your colleagues handle mistakes, right? Especially in those early days.
Right.
Maybe give us a sense of those teachable moments, specifically on the clinical side of things with a new provider.
Well, that's why it's so powerful to work with people that are willing to say, I don't know, or I need help.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I do know, but I'm not connecting with a patient and they need a different personality, that the patient comes, first, that we need to figure out how to best serve them, whether it's, even if we feel comfortable clinically, if they're not, really getting our communication style. And we're always doing that, saying, hey, I could use your help on this one, or I'm being asked to get involved in situations that they totally have under control, but it could just use another perspective of, how best to communicate. Or sometimes there's true needs. We all have our areas of expertise and a willingness to say, I need help. And so I think that those are wonderful personalities to work with that, everybody's really has the same goal. And that is, how do we make this situation the best for the patient? Because sometimes we deal with irregularities that, even though we did our very best, we're dealing with an irregularity. And those are hard moments. And so if there is a patient complaint, not only are we going to try our best to get through it, and I have to tell you, Bud, it's really one of the hard parts of being a doctor. When you have a patient complaint, the majority of them you can get through and get them to a better place, but every now and then you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard when you care deeply. But no matter what, you've tried your best with that person, and maybe you've even made a referral to another practice if that's what's best. But you also want to go back and look at what was the step that led to the frustration? What could have been better? Is there something with our preoperative education? Is it something with our forms that we can improve? So I think whenever you get a patient complaint, it's an opportunity to not only do your best to try to get closer to that patient and make the situation be better than, even if it had not happened, because some of my closest patients are the ones I've had challenges with, but to also look at your systems and how do we minimize the chance of that happening again. And that's how you gradually build a great patient experience.
When I used to wait tables, when there was a customer complaint, the first thing you do is remove the plate, remove the offensive item, right? And then you always alert somebody, either another server that's kind of in charge of that shift or the manager. escalate it for them.
Right.
So they don't have to ask for it. And before you know it, somebody's coming out and saying, hey, I heard your experience hasn't gone like you hoped.
Right.
And I think that for customers or patients, it's so helpful just to know, oh, wow, okay, so they've got a whole team
Right.
who's paying attention to me.
Right.
That goes so
To
far.
validate their concern.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And
Brilliant.
it's an important thing for young doctors to learn.
Right.
Don't go it alone.
Right.
Got a whole team here.
Right.
And you know, you were talking about patient complaints, but I was even thinking things like when you know, a new provider maybe stubs their toe on a team member relationship,
Right.
And you know, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. And you know, good coachable moments in the young career of a provider, but they have to happen, and they have to
Yeah.
happen early,
Right.
or they kind of perpetuate.
Right.
So
Well, great people want to do whatever it takes to get through those situations. And I really value tests like that.
mm-hmm.
You know, if I have someone that, you know, did something wrong, and sometimes the someone that did something wrong is me,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to be talked to. So I mean, that's why it's easy for me to talk to others, you know, about it and say, okay, do you agree that that's wrong? And yes, you know. If it's no, well then, you know, we have a problem.
Right.
And do you agree that, you know, you'd like to work on making it better? And if it's a no, we have a problem. You know, if it's a yes, you know, there's 9 lives as far as I'm concerned. As long as people are willing to recognize right from wrong and willing to work on it.
Well, and I've heard you say before with folks, hey, this is going to be an interesting opportunity for you, because
Yeah.
there's a couple of ways that this could go. I think one of them is the right way,
All right.
right? And so let me kind of communicate this scenario to
Right.
you. Really important to do that as much as possible early in someone's career, doctor or otherwise. Well, listen, everybody, we've talked a lot about how to get a provider on the right track within the first 90 days, everything from, you know, the philosophy behind why we do what we do to some tactical ways to get them busy in their clinic and how to get properly introduced to the community. This is an important topic that we're going to continue to add to over time. And I'm looking forward to a session here in the future when we talk about how to do this same thing with team members that are more frontline, not necessarily just doctors, but more frontline team members that are right there in the scrum daily with patients and doctors and doing the hard work. So thanks for the great discussion, Vance.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.